So, what if the ultimate secret to overcoming life and death wasn't like a biological puzzle to be solved?
Right, because we usually think of immortality as an engineering problem,
Mm.
like gene editing or medical advancements or maybe uploading our brains to a server.
Exactly. We always treat it like something we have to fix physically, but what if it's actually this non-material structure that you can hack using literally nothing but your own
It's a
consciousness?
complete paradigm shift. I mean, it moves the entire conversation completely away from the physical body.
Yeah.
If you treat the physical body as just like a temporary carrier, then the power of eternity is placed squarely into the realm of the mind.
And to understand how to actually hack this non-material structure, we kind of have to go way back. We need to look at how the secret of life and death was originally passed down.
Yes, the origin story here is fascinating.
It really is. So for today's deep dive, we are looking at translated excerpts from a 2011 text by a writer named Shekfeng. It's titled, How to Liberate Yourself from Life and Death.
And this text takes us on a wild journey.
Oh, totally. The whole thing kicks off with this incredible moment involving Buddha Sakyamuni at the Lingshan Mountain Assembly.
Right, so picture this. He is standing in front of this immense assembly. I mean, people are waiting for profound cosmic wisdom.
Thousands of followers just waiting for the ultimate secret. And the way he shares it is, well, he doesn't say a single word. He just holds up a flower.
Yeah, instead of giving a grand lecture on the nature of reality, he simply holds up a flower and smiles.
It's crazy.
And out of everyone there, only his first disciple, Mahakasyapa, actually understands the meaning.
And what does Makasapa do? He just gives a faint smile right back.
Exactly. It's almost like an inside joke.
Yeah. But the punchline is literally the secret of the universe.
Right. And Buddha then declares that he possesses what he calls the true Dharma eye and the marvelous mind of nirvana.
Okay, let's unpack those terms for a second because they sound incredibly dense. When he says true Dharma eye, he isn't talking about, a literal third eye on his forehead, right?
No, no. The true Dharma eye is basically the ability to see the absolute truth of existence, like beyond all our usual human illusions and filters.
Got it. And the marvelous mind of nirvana.
That refers to a state of absolute undisturbed tranquility. But, the really crucial part of this declaration is that Buddha states this teaching does not rest on words or letters.
Which is a huge detail.
Right. It is a special understanding that is completely outside of the scriptures. It can only be transferred directly from mind to mind.
Which basically means the ultimate truth cannot just be codified into a textbook that you just memorize. It has to be experienced.
Exactly. So Mahakasyapa experiences this, and he passes his understanding directly to Ananda.
Who then passes it to Shanavasa.
Right. And this unbroken mind-to-mind chain continues for generations, all the way down to the 28th patriarch of Buddhism, a figure named Bodhidharma.
And Bodhidharma is where things get really interesting because he gets very specific instructions from the guy before him, the 27th patriarch, Prajnatara.
Yeah, Prajnanar doesn't just pass on the teaching. He gives Bodhidharma a robe and a begging bowl.
Like physical symbols of the transmission.
Exactly. And the instruction is basically to wait 60 years after Prajnatara attains nirvana and then take these items, along with the true Dharma eye, from India to China.
So Bodhidharma actually does the trek. He takes Zen Buddhism to China, and he becomes the first Chinese Zen Buddhist patriarch.
And the lineage just continues there, mind to mind.
Yeah, Bodhidharma passes the true Dharma eye, the robe, and the bowl to the second patriarch, then to the third, the fourth, and finally it gets the fifth patriarch, Master Hongren.
But this is where the entire system hits a massive, super dramatic roadblock.
A deeply human roadblock, honestly.
Totally. Master Hongren is aging, and he needs to name his successor the sixth patriarch.
Yeah.
And the person everyone at the monastery just assumes will get the title is Master Shensiyu.
Right, because Shensiyu is this highly reputed, deeply admired professor at the monastery. He's got, like, the perfect resume.
The prestige, the following, all of it.
But Hongren looks around his monastery and realizes the person who actually possesses the true understanding, the one who is genuinely ready to receive the true Dharma eye, isn't the professor at all.
No, it's this completely unknown handyman.
Yeah, a guy working in the back courtyard named Huning. It is essentially the ultimate ancient corporate drama.
It really is.
It's like the CEO of a massive company bypassing his fancy Ivy League vice president to hand the keys of the entire empire to the guy sorting mail in the basement.
That is the perfect analogy. And Hongren is in a terrible position here. I
Yeah.
mean, he knows that if he just publicly hands the sacred robe and bowl to the handyman, The senior monks are going to revolt.
Oh, absolutely. They wouldn't accept a laborer as their spiritual leader.
No way. So Hongren pulls a very clever trick to force the issue. He calls the whole monastery together and tells them that the lives and deaths of mortals are matters of huge importance.
He kind of scolds them, right?
Yeah, he essentially says, you all just pray for blessings, but you aren't actually trying to escape the bitter sea of life and death.
Wow.
And then he sets a challenge. Everyone must write a stanza, like a short poem, proving their understanding of the essence of mind.
And whoever writes the poem that proves they truly understand gets the robe, the dharma, and the title of the sixth patriarch.
Exactly. And to the absolute shock of the monastery, the handyman, Huineng, wins the poetry contest.
The guy from the back courtyard.
Yeah. His stanza demonstrates a profound, totally unclouded grasp of the wordless truth. So he gets the items, the teachings, and becomes the sixth patriarch.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this story for a second because it feels like a massive contradiction to me.
How so?
Well, we established like 5 minutes ago that this teaching strictly does not rest on words or letters. It has to be an experiential mind-to-mind transfer.
Right.
Isn't it incredibly ironic or, even hypocritical that a strictly wordless teaching was ultimately won through a poetry contest, literally by writing words down?
It does seem contradictory on the surface, but what's fascinating here is how it actually highlights the core tension of any spiritual lineage.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, you have the pure, wordless understanding of the universe, that mind-to-mind connection, but you still have to navigate the messy, skeptical physical world.
Ah, I see.
Hongren knew Huineng already had the understanding. He didn't need the poem for himself. He needed a worldly mechanism to prove it to the other monks.
Right, because they only understood reality through words and credentials and status.
Exactly. The poem wasn't the spiritual realization itself. It was just a translation of the realization, tailored for a specific skeptical audience.
So it was basically a proof of concept.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. But the text also notes that Huineng is actually the final patriarch of Zen, because those physical items, the robe, the bowl, and the direct, unadulterated teachings, are lost after him.
Which leads us right into a massive paradox.
Yeah, because if the true wordless teachings were lost centuries ago, how on earth could the author of our source text, Xuefeng, possibly be writing about them in 2011?
It's a great question, and Xuefeng is acutely aware of this paradox. He addresses it directly in the text and with a surprisingly good sense of humor, honestly.
Yeah, he jokes about it, right?
He does. He mentions that he used to joke that he was the seventh patriarch of Zen, having penned 5 heavily weighted articles titled On Zen by the Seventh Patriarch of Zen 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
But he immediately admits he is trapped in a catch-22.
Completely trapped. He quotes the Buddha's original instruction. This subtle Dharma gate is outside of the scriptures.
So Xuefeng says, look, if I write this down with words, I am actively rebelling against the teachings of Buddha. I am literally breaking the foundational rule.
Right. But if he doesn't express it with words, how can you, the reader, possibly know how to escape the cycle of life and death?
It's a tough spot.
He's caught between respecting the ancient tradition of silence and having this genuine desire to help people achieve liberation today.
And his solution to this paradox is this concept he calls doing a slide over the water.
I love that imagery.
Me too. But what does he actually mean by sliding over the water, like in a practical sense?
He means he is going to use words, but he's just skimming the surface. The words themselves are not the depth of the truth.
Okay.
He makes it very clear that whether you actually achieve liberation from life and death doesn't depend on just reading his sentences. It depends on your destiny, your root of wisdom, and your level of praising Tao.
Let's translate those terms for a second. Root of wisdom isn't about your IQ or, how many books you've read. He's referring to a person's innate underlying capacity to grasp deep spiritual concepts.
Precise.
And praising Tao basically means aligning yourself with the fundamental natural flow of the universe rather than constantly fighting against it.
Right. If you don't have that root of wisdom or that alignment, the words on the page are just ink.
It's like trying to teach someone how to ride a bicycle by just handing them a physics textbook.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right, like you can read all the chapters you want about momentum and center of gravity and gyroscopic balance, but can the words in that textbook ever actually capture the purely experiential truth of riding the bike?
No, never. At some point, you just have to get on the seat, feel the balance, and ride.
I feel like that's what Shuofeng is admitting here. His words are just the physics textbook.
That is exactly the dynamic. Sufeng knows his words aren't the actual vehicle of salvation. They're just fingers pointing at the moon, or pointing at the water he is sliding over.
But he believes it is better to point than to just leave people completely in the dark.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the words are just pointing at the truth, let's look at what exactly he is pointing at. How does Shuofeng actually define life and death?
This is where things get really intense.
Yeah, because this is where the text pivots sharply from ancient monastery history into a seriously mind-bending theory of multidimensional physics.
It's the core metaphysical argument of the entire text. Shuofeng states very clearly, there is no life or death in life.
Wait, say that again.
There is no life or death in life. And we need to distinguish here between the biological life of a body and capital L life as an eternal concept.
Okay.
What the world sees as death, he argues, is a complete illusion. He calls physical death merely the evolved deduction of the carrier of life.
The evolved deduction of the carrier. That phrasing took me a minute when I read it.
It's dense.
But essentially, the physical body is just a temporary carrier, like a radio receiving a signal. When the radio breaks, we mistakenly deduce that the music itself has ceased to exist.
Yes, but the text says life has nothing to do with time at all. It is completely beyond all ages.
So if we aren't our physical bodies, what are we? Weavik says the true nature of life is a non-material structure.
A non-material structure, exactly. And this is where the physics of it all comes into play. This structure dictates everything about your existence. The form you take in reality is decided by your non-material structure.
But the real twist here is the relationship between this structure and consciousness. The text says consciousness originates from the structure, but crucially, it also controls the structure.
Yes, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a total feedback loop.
I'm trying to visualize this. By removing the physical body from the equation entirely, he's basically saying your thoughts are actively writing the physical laws of your next existence.
That is the exact mechanism. Your consciousness actively shapes your structure. The text lays it out simply. Human consciousness makes people. Animal consciousness makes animals.
Wow.
And if you develop what the text calls celestial or Buddha consciousness, then your structure mathematically changes and you literally become a celestial being or a Buddha.
Which completely redefines what we call death.
It does.
If you are a non-material structure that is constantly being shaped by your consciousness, then death isn't an endpoint. It is just a transformation. It's a phase change.
Right. Shuofeng describes it as crossing the gate of life and death.
When you step into a new dimension or a new world, it looks like death from the side you are leaving. But from the side you're entering, it is life.
It is entirely a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Based strictly on which dimension you are observing from.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Think of it like water turning into steam.
Okay.
If you are a fish living in a pond and a drop of water evaporates, to the fish, that water just vanished. It died.
Right.
But the water didn't die. It just changed states. It absorbed energy, changed its structure, and entered a gaseous dimension where the fish just can't see it anymore.
That's a brilliant analogy. And this is where the concept of the non-material structure becomes so revolutionary. You aren't just passively evaporating like that drop of water based on random environmental heat.
Right.
Consciousness controls structure.
Yeah.
You dictate the phase change. The specific frequency and level of your consciousness determines exactly what state of matter or what dimension you will occupy next.
It's wild. And to back this up, the text leans deeply into Buddhist philosophy, specifically quoting a famous passage about emptiness. But we need to be careful here, because when we hear the word emptiness in English, we usually think of a dark, depressing void. But that's not what it means here, is it?
Not at all. In this context, emptiness means a lack of fixed, permanent, independent physical form.
Oh, yeah.
The text quotes a passage saying that all dharmas, which means all phenomena, objects, and concepts in the universe, are marked with emptiness. They neither begin nor end. They are neither complete nor deficient.
The quote goes on to essentially strip away everything we think of as solid reality. It says that in emptiness, there are no forms, feelings, or perceptions. No eyes, ears, noses, tongues, bodies, or minds. No decay, and no death.
It is the ultimate letting go of the physical carrier.
Right. And by relying on this specific realization, what the text calls the profession of wisdom, Bodhisattvas can dwell without what it calls thought coverings.
Yes.
Thought coverings being like our mental filters, our anxieties, our obsession with the physical world.
Exactly. Because they have removed these thought coverings, they aren't trembling or upset by the physical world's constant changes.
Because they see it for what it is.
Right. And eventually, by maintaining this completely unclouded consciousness, they attain nirvana. They achieve absolute freedom from this cycle of life and death because they realize the physical world was just an illusion, masking their eternal non-material structure.
Okay, so multidimensional immortality, crossing the gate, shedding the physical form. This all sounds incredibly profound in theory.
Sure.
But, as the text rightly points out, we are mortals. We have what Suefen calls fleshy eyes and mortal stalks.
Right.
We are biologically wired to trust what we can see, and we just can't actually see these higher dimensional spaces.
We really can.
So naturally, we are going to read this and be full of doubt. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? How on earth do you and I actually put this into practice today?
Swifting acknowledges this skepticism perfectly. He knows our fleshy eyes limit us. So his solution isn't to ask you to just blindly believe him. It is surprisingly grounded. He says, follow the guide and verify step by step.
Verify it yourself. And the fascinating part is that the way you verify it isn't by, like, meditating in a cave for 30 years or building a particle accelerator to mathematically find higher dimensions.
Right.
You verify it by confronting 5 highly specific, highly challenging psychological roadblocks.
Yes, the 5 hindrances.
The text asks, what hinders us from liberating from the samsara of life and death? The answer is 5 things: greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and suspicion.
These are the 5 anchors, basically keeping your non-material structure tied down to this current heavy dimension.
Now, I really have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
We just spent all this time talking about mind-bending physics, feedback loops of consciousness, and crossing the gate of life and death. And the ultimate hack to achieve this is trying not to be arrogant, trying not to be suspicious.
I know how it sounds.
These just sound like a standard list of moral rules. Be a good person and you'll go to heaven. How does stopping yourself from being stubborn literally unlock interdimensional travel?
This raises an important question, because if you look at them just as moral rules, you miss the entire physics engine of the text.
Okay.
You have to remember the internal logic we established earlier. Consciousness controls structure. These 5 hindrances are not being presented as moral judgments from some cosmic judge. They are mechanical, structural flaws.
Structural flaws in the non-material code.
Exactly. Think of your consciousness as the source code for the non-material structure you are currently building for your next phase of existence.
Okay, I'm with you.
If that is true, then let's look at how the text defines these 5 roadblocks, starting with greed and anger.
Right. It defines greed not just as wanting money, but as the constant want to always possess more, purely out of self-interest. And anger is detesting, blaming, and envying others. So how are those structural flaws?
Well, because greed is fundamentally a state of lack and heaviness. It is an obsession with accumulating physical or emotional weight.
That makes sense.
And anger is a chaotic, destructive frequency. If your consciousness is constantly emitting the dense frequency of anger or the heavy gravity of greed, it is physically impossible for it to generate the buoyant, fluid, celestial structure needed to cross into a higher dimension.
Wow.
A corrupted mind can only build a corrupted structure.
That makes so much sense. It's not a punishment. It's literally just math. You can't build a spaceship out of lead and expect it to fly.
Exactly.
Let's look at the third one: ignorance. I was really struck by his definition here. He doesn't mean being uneducated or not reading enough books. He defines ignorance as the steadfast belief that you are always right and never wrong.
Yes.
Why is that specific trait so dangerous to the structure?
Because it creates extreme rigidity. If you believe you are always right, your consciousness is totally closed. It cannot adapt, it cannot learn, and it cannot shift perspectives.
Ah.
To cross the gate of life and death into an entirely new dimension, your structure must be incredibly adaptable. Rigidity basically causes the structure to shatter under pressure.
That's a great way to put it. Then we have arrogance. The text defines this as self-importance, disdain, and crucially, a lack of a gracious, cherishing heart.
Right.
If you lack a cherishing heart, you view yourself as completely separate from and superior to everything else in the universe. You sever your connection to that broader life we talked about earlier.
And the final roadblock is suspicion. Now, this isn't healthy scientific skepticism. The text defines suspicion as being full of doubts, not facing facts, being hypocritical, and being self-deceiving.
If you are self-deceiving, you are literally glitching your own source code.
Yes.
You are feeding false data into the system that builds your structure. So Shufeng says that if you overcome these 5 things, greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and suspicion, you will understand the truth and liberate yourself.
But he explicitly notes that while the reason is very simple, putting it into real moment-to-moment practice is incredibly difficult.
Because it requires you to actively monitor the physics of your own mind all day, every day.
Exactly. And this leads to the text's final, rather chilling cliffhanger warning.
Yeah, this part got me.
Overcoming these 5 flaws isn't just an exercise in feeling peaceful. The author warns that even after you liberate yourself from life and death, you absolutely must know where your consciousness is steering you next.
Right, because if your consciousness is still tainted by these structural flaws and you inadvertently head to what he calls the lower world, he says bluntly, you will be miserable.
Your corrupted code will sink to a dimension that matches its density. Talk about high stakes.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It forces you to take radical responsibility for your own mind. You can't rely on anyone else to fix your non-material structure.
You really can't.
It brings this entire deep dive full circle, honestly. We started by asking how to hack the non-material structure of immortality. We traced the history of this secret from the wordless experiential smile of Mahakasyapa.
All the way down to the dramatic crowning of a monastery handyman who possessed the true, unclouded understanding.
We navigated the paradox of the author trying to write down an unwritten truth, just sliding over the water to point us toward a realization that words alone can never truly capture.
And that realization pointed us straight into a staggering multidimensional theory, that there is no biological death, only a transformation.
The ultimate realization that your consciousness is not just a byproduct of your brain, but the active architect of your eternal non-material structure.
Yes.
And the only way to ensure that structure can survive the crossing of the gate is through the rigorous, daily, minute-by-minute practice of shedding our 5 biggest structural flaws: greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and suspicion.
It takes the grandest, most abstract metaphysical concept imaginable, eternal life and multidimensional travel, and drops it right into your lap during your morning commute or your next stressful argument with a coworker.
And that is exactly where we want to leave you today. Because if Juefeng is right, if the core premise of this text holds true, that consciousness controls structure, then every single thought you have has literal physical weight.
Every single one.
If every moment of petty anger, every flash of arrogance, or every rigid, stubborn belief that you are always right is actively building the literal non-material structure you will inhabit after you cross the gate of life and death, what exact shape is your consciousness building for you right now? Are you designing a Buddha? Or are you charting a direct course for that miserable lower world? Something to think about the next time you feel your blood pressure rising. Catch you on the next deep dive.